on both, and for that I preserved the papilla on the right and on the left. I elevated a flap involving 2 teeth on each side from the side to be regenerated. And I completed the surgery with 2 vertical release incisions deep behind the forelegs. And this was the design of the flap. I performed the passivation of the flap. At the end of my presentation, I will show you my mail address in order that if you would like to receive the 2 articles that I published relating the passivation of the flap, buccal and lingual flap, a new lingual flap and brushing technique, we have to change the chart because sometimes they don't work. No, you can. Yes, the battery. Yes, don't work. Okay, perfect. Okay, in case that if you would like to receive these papers relating brushing technique, the passivation of the flap on the buccal side, and the new lingual flap, the technique that I presented several years ago, 12 years ago, relating the disconnection or detachment of the mucosa attachment, the superficial cap of the malleoid muscle. It's a very safe procedures in order to passivate the flap. You can send me an email and it will be a great pleasure to send you these papers. Even if I am a Genovese, the Genovese say that I have the short hands, I send you without any cost. So, in this picture, you can see a phase of the passivation for which I isolated the muscles from the flap. This is the superficial part of the flap that covers the portion of the muscles. This is the line. Okay, this is the line of the periosteum incision, okay, that we perform. And then from this line, I detached the flap, desiccating the under mucosa and layer and mucosa, of course, because it covers the first, from the muscles. And this is a kind of procedure that allows to respect completely the integrity of the muscles. It means that we can obtain an incredible vertical cornal displacement of the buccal flap, on average 3.5 centimeters, no millimeters, centimeters, without bleeding, respecting the anatomical structure, and without any consequence relating swollen, because we don't damage inner part of the flap, because we don't cut the muscles, but we dissecate the under mucosal layer from the muscles. And this is a very gentle and safe procedure that limits the bleeding and the swelling. And if you would like, at the end of the presentation, I will show you my mail. You can send me an email, and it will be a great pleasure to send you this paper. Very, very, in my opinion, fantastic paper. They changed my approach to the surgery. And you can see that this is the movement of the flap after the application of the brushing technique. 4 centimeters probably, I don't know. But in any case, this is the movement. But you can appreciate the integrity of the flap. I didn't damage it. There is any suffering, because the procedure is very, very delicate. And we don't have bleeding, because I didn't cut the muscles. And this is the case. You can see the scars, the bone scars caused by the implant with the abscess and significant absorption of the bone. We lost the bone vertically and horizontally. 2-3 millimeters vertically and the major part in horizontality. And for this reason, I decided to use a non-absorbable titanium reinforced membrane that has to be shaped before and then stabilized on the palatal side. We are speaking of non-absorbable titanium reinforced membrane. It has own shape. It means that when we move the membrane from the palatal side to the buccal side, we don't change the shape of the biomaterial, because the pre-shape of the membrane has the characteristic of the container. And so we can do matching between the shape of the membrane and the shape of the biomaterial without changing the position of the biomaterial, because we have the reinforce of the titanium. So we completed the grafting of the biomaterial, compensated the horizontality and the verticality. And when we finished the grafting of the biomaterial, we stabilized the membrane over the top of the biomaterial, fixing the membrane also on the buccal side. We tried to leave part of the bone balcony free from the contact of the membrane on the right and left side around the adjacent teeth, in order to activate the biological contact, in order to avoid the infection of the GBR. We have to restore the biological contact. What does mean? It means that if we close the flaps perfectly around the teeth, but we don't respect the condition in order to restore the biological attachment, we could obtain mechanical seal, but not biological seal. The mechanical seal is this one. The mechanical seal is this one, okay? But I don't have any junction between my hands and his neck. I have a contact, but I don't have a junction. The junction is the biological seal. The contact is the mechanical seal. And when we elevate with the full thickness detachment the flaps, before starting with the GBR or during the starting of the GBR, we interrupted the long epithelial attachment. We interrupt the connective tissue attachment, and we interrupt the periosteum attachment. Do you agree with me? Okay. This was the condition for which the bacteria couldn't pass below the flaps, because it is a biological seal. If we don't restore the condition during the GBR, in order to get or to restore the biological seal, the risk is that we can see a perfect closure of the flaps around the teeth, but without restoring the biological seal. It means it's the similar when I place my hands, I place it around your neck. How I can place my hands around your neck at the same way I can remove immediately, without any energy. It means that if we don't leave a minimal part of the bone balcony free from the contact with the membrane, we cannot restore the periosteum attachment, because the periosteum can be attacked on the bone, not on the membrane. And if we don't place the flaps in terms of their spatiality correctly, it means if we place the flaps around the last tooth too coronally, because we do mistakes in the suturing, the repositioning, in the placing of the membrane too coronally. So for several times we could place the soft tissues too coronally if compared with the original position of the flap when we detach with the full thickness approach. We cannot restore the biological seal. Why? The connective tissue, where can find its adhesion, its contact? On the enamel or on the cementum of the root? On the cementum of the root. It means that if we placed our flaps too coronally, for several reasons, the periosteum layer cannot get in contact with the residual bone that they left free from the contact of membrane. The periosteum layer should be placed here in order to restore the periosteum contact. Instead, I place here. No periosteum contact, okay? The connective tissue attachment on the root was performed in the part of the roots that was free from the enamel, covered from the cementum, 3 millimeters on average. The connective tissue attachment can be performed here on the cementum. But if I place the flap not here, but here, the connective tissue will be faced with enamel. We cannot have biological attachment. And it means that it is insufficient to see my hands close around the neck or the flaps around the tooth, it isn't sufficient. Because you don't have to be surprised if after 2 or 3 weeks you have an infection. Because apparently was all perfect. I closed perfectly the flaps around the teeth perfectly. I passivated very well the flaps. I left part of the bone in order to restore the periosteum attachment, but then I did a big mistake. I placed the soft tissue in incorrect spatiality. And for that, we cannot restore periosteum attachment, we cannot restore connective tissue attachment, and we have a precise contact of the flaps against the root, but we don't have seal, and the bacteria can passes below and contaminate the GBR. After the closure of the membrane, I performed the sutures, two lines always, horizontal matrix sutures plus interrupted sutures, and absorbable sutures on the vertical release incision. This is the healing after 12-15 days, the time of the sutures removal. And this is the day on which I removed the sutures. And you can see that the